Revival Trance was one of the underdogs during the very early teaser period of the Final Fantasy Commander decks, not because Terra Herald of Hope is a weak commander, but because the hype seemed to have focused on the very powerful Ishtola and Cloud decks. Soon, we've learned that Celes, Rune Knight, is going to be the secondary commander for Revival Trance, and that's where things get interesting. Combining discard mechanics with reanimation and different types of graveyard play makes her one of the most powerful commanders in Mardu colors, if not the most powerful one currently once you upgrade the precon deck in the right direction. The first stop would be the infamous Altar of Dementia, an extremely versatile artifact useful for both filling your own graveyard but also milling your opponents if necessary. While it's the self-mill that benefits your deck the most, there is a lot of potential for borrowing some of the best cards your opponents have in their graveyard, especially when you know that they are a neat source of big creatures, for example. Another fine artifact for mill is Mesmeric Orb, which is much cheaper to cast and slowly builds up in power as the match progresses. You don't need to sack anything to it and has the very cool quality of shutting down all those nasty near infinite tap-untap loops, as every time they untapped it thins their library out. This is probably the best moment to remind about this guy, the Dranith Magistrate. That makes sure your opponents who might happen to also play a Reanimator type deck don't get to cast their graveyard bombs. For our own reanimation, there's already a decent selection included in the precon, but a lot of room for improvement as well. Animate Dead, the classic known since Magic's first edition, is still one of the most useful ways to bring a creature onto the battlefield from any player's graveyard and under your control. Then we have Dance of the Dead, which allows a similar play, but in a little bit different way, the classic from Ice Age. Strangely, not a single enchantment was included into the precon, and there is so many powerful ones that synergize so well with the deck's mechanic. The number one on the list would be Virtue of Persistence, that not only gives you a creature from among those in any graveyard, but also has that much needed early game removal utility in the form of a 2-mana adventure. You probably thought about self-milling your whole deck becoming an issue at least once while watching this video, and there is a solution for that as well. I would highly recommend adding Out of the Tombs both for the mill factor and self-mill protector. This way, even if you're out of cards in your library, you still keep playing, and instead of losing, you get to reanimate a creature. Since you have red mana available, these two nasty enchantments come to your aid at high synergy. Underworld Breach allows you to cast spells directly from your graveyard, while Sneak Attack becomes the utility that not only gives access to a creature's hasty aid for a mere 1 red mana, but also puts that creature into your graveyard afterwards. Buried Alive makes it so much easier to have the right cards in there, so it's worth having it as that much needed tutor. In this deck, putting 3 creatures into the graveyard becomes better than drawing 3 creature cards, and you get to choose exactly which ones you put there. A rather underestimated 4-mana instant is Heartwarming Redemption. You can play it on your opponent's turn, discard your whole hand into your graveyard and draw that many cards +1, and as a cherry on top you gain life equal to that cards you've drawn this way. There's also a neat wipe that's almost as if it was designed for this deck. Starfall Invocation, which destroys all creatures but lets you return a creature from any graveyard to the battlefield directly. You can also go in that direction and add some more cards like Sevin's Reclamation, but since it revolves around permanents for 3 mana and lower, a much better choice would be creatures like Karmic Guide. If your opponent's graveyards become filled as fast as yours, you might also benefit from that by including Shieldred in your deck. Both the one that flips into the True Scriptures and Shieldred the Whispering one. It's like having Virtue of Persistence on the table, but better. If your opponent's graveyards don't fill as fast as you'd want, try going in that direction but without sacrificing your self-mill potential. Bridge the Multiverse is a nice way to do that and get some nice surprise permanents in the process, although it's pricey with a 7 mana cost. Try not to rely on heavy cost spells, especially when there are early game cards that gain value as the turns progress. Overlord of the Baelmurk is an excellent example with the 2 mana impending cost that nicely mills 4 cards for you, and 2 mana is the cost of Ripple of Undeath, which is a nice early enchantment with long play value that provides you with constant mill supply. The more interesting reanimator stuff happens with higher mana cost spells, and if you feel that there is not enough of them in your deck, there is a wide selection of them. Angel of Suffering is a turbo mill card for scenarios where the opponents focus on you. Not only do you prevent damage dealt to you, you get cards milled into your own graveyard instead. Archpriest of Shadows might not seem a powerful card, but when you realize that it gives the Death Touch and Reanimate abilities to another creature on your battlefield as well, it allows you to have some amazing intimidation potential for your big creatures. Creatures like Piru the Volatile, for example, a big creature with flying and lifelink you can simply choose not to pay the upkeep cost for and wipe those pesky non-legendary creatures from the battlefield. You have more than enough reanimator spells to get Piru back onto the field anyway. Cards like Unburial Rites, for example, which is special because it can be cast from the graveyard, either for the second time or after being milled and landing there. Then we have the Chef's Kiss, Bladewing Deathless Tyrant. Not only does it give you a zombie army for each creature in your graveyard, it has haste, which means that your opponents have very limited options to react fast enough before you attack with them. Be sure to like the video if you found it helpful, and as usual, the comment section is open to your suggestions and favorite cards that you think would synergize well. Catch you in another video. Bye.